The sun had just dipped below the horizon, casting a warm amber glow over the cityscape of San Francisco. Ethan Carter's penthouse was bustling with activity, decorated with elegant drapes, fresh flowers, and soft lighting that created a romantic ambience. It was their third wedding anniversary, and Ethan had promised Emily a celebration that would be etched in their memories forever. Emily Carter, a vision in a sapphire blue gown, smiled as she looked around at the familiar faces of her family and close friends. Her heart swelled with happiness as she noticed the effort Ethan had put into the evening, something she hadn't expected given their recent strained relationship. They had been through a rough patch, but this grand gesture felt like a beacon of hope for their faltering marriage. Ethan had always been a man of precision and dedication. At 35, he had already made a name for himself in the tech industry, known for his relentless pursuit of excellence. His success had come at a cost. His personal life had become a battleground of trust issues and secrets. But tonight, Ethan seemed determined to put everything right. The evening started with a toast. Ethan, standing tall with his glass raised, spoke words that seemed to melt the room with their sincerity. "Emily," he began, his voice steady and full of emotion, "3 years ago, we vowed to stand by each other through thick and thin. Tonight, I want to renew those vows, to remind you and everyone here of the love that brought us together." Emily's eyes filled with tears as Ethan recited their original vows, his voice imbued with a tenderness she hadn't heard in months. It was a moment of connection she had longed for, and she clung to the hope that this gesture might be a turning point for their marriage. As the evening continued, Emily felt a sense of peace. The weight of their recent conflicts seemed to lift, replaced by the warmth of shared memories and the support of loved ones. Her father, Franklin James, was particularly moved. At 58, Franklin had seen and done a lot in his life as a retired naval officer. He was a man of honor and integrity, and seeing his daughter so touched by Ethan's gesture was both reassuring and emotional for him. The highlight of the night was yet to come. Ethan had arranged for a special surprise that he had hinted at earlier in the day. With a dramatic flourish, he asked Franklin to bring out a large, carefully wrapped box. The anticipation in the room was palpable as everyone turned their attention to the centerpiece of the evening. Franklin, looking slightly perplexed but dutiful, approached Emily with the box. He handed it to her with a gentle smile, his eyes reflecting a mixture of pride and concern. Emily's heart raced with excitement as she carefully peeled away the wrapping paper. She expected something personal and meaningful, perhaps a piece of jewelry or a sentimental keepsake, but as she lifted the lid of the box, her anticipation quickly turned to confusion, then horror. Inside, she found an STD test kit, its presence an immediate shock. Beside it lay several torn pieces of what looked like their marriage certificate, a symbol of their commitment now fragmented and reduced to meaningless shreds. Finally, there was a DVD, the sight of which made Emily's hands tremble. The room fell silent. All eyes were on Ethan as he nodded for the DVD to be played. Emily's father, trying to make sense of the situation, fumbled with the remote control. The screen flickered to life, and the atmosphere grew increasingly tense. The footage began with scenes of Emily from a recent trip to South America, a supposed cheating safari that Ethan had uncovered. There were clips of Emily with a man who was clearly not Ethan. They appeared intimate, and the footage grew increasingly explicit. The most devastating part came when the camera revealed that Emily was pregnant, a revelation that hit Ethan with the force of a sledgehammer. Emily's breath caught in her throat as the evidence played out before her. Her father's face turned ashen, his strong demeanor crumbling in the face of the undeniable proof. He staggered back, struggling to process the betrayal that had just been laid bare. The room erupted into a cacophony of shocked murmurs and gasps. Emily's mind raced, her emotions a whirlwind of confusion, guilt, and despair. She tried to speak, to explain, but the weight of the revelation was too great. This STD test kit was a cruel reminder of the personal violation she had inflicted, while the torn marriage certificate symbolized the destruction of everything she once held dear. Ethan remained composed but visibly pained. He had been waiting for this moment, knowing that the truth needed to be revealed in all its harshness. His voice was steady but filled with sadness as he addressed the room. "Emily, I wanted to confront you with the truth, to lay bare the reality of what's been happening. This isn't just about betrayal, it's about the complete disintegration of our trust and the future we thought we had." The room, once filled with celebration, now felt like a stage for a tragic drama. Emily's pleas for understanding and forgiveness were met with a cold silence. The celebration that was meant to be a symbol of their enduring love had turned into a public spectacle of their private failures. As the evening drew to a close, Emily was left to confront the consequences of her actions and the fallout from Ethan's calculated revelation. The anniversary that was meant to heal and unite had become a night of raw, painful truth, leaving both Ethan and Emily facing an uncertain and tumultuous future. The silence that followed the DVD's final scene was deafening. Emily Carter sat frozen in her seat, her mind grappling with the devastating reality unfolding before her. Her father's face was pale, his normally stern expression now a mask of utter shock and disbelief. The room, once filled with the warmth of celebration, had turned into a place of raw emotion and confusion. Emily had hoped for a chance to explain, to offer some kind of rationalization for the unthinkable. She turned towards Ethan, her eyes pleading, "Ethan, please, let me explain. This isn't what it looks like. There's a reason." But Ethan cut her off with a sharp shake of his head. "Emily, I've seen enough," he said firmly, his voice betraying no hint of the anguish she felt. "The evidence is clear, and it's not just about what happened. It's about the lies and the deceit that have been eating away at our relationship." Emily's father, Franklin James, who had been a pillar of strength throughout his life, now appeared to be crumbling. His hands shook as he tried to process the sight of his daughter, who had always been his pride, engaged in acts of betrayal. The room's atmosphere was thick with tension as he struggled to maintain composure. "Emily, how could you?" Franklin's voice was barely above a whisper, laced with hurt. "We trusted you. I trusted you. And now this is what we get." Emily's tears flowed freely now, her makeup streaking her cheeks. She tried to speak, but the words caught in her throat. She could see the disappointment in her father's eyes and the cold resolve in Ethan's. Her pleas seemed to fall on deaf ears. Ethan, who had been carefully orchestrating this moment, finally spoke. "I want you to know that this wasn't just about revenge. It was about confronting the truth and dealing with the fallout. I had been trying to protect myself and my sanity from the constant lies." Emily tried to regain her composure, struggling to form coherent sentences through her sobs. "Ethan, please, I made a mistake, a terrible mistake, but it wasn't about hurting you. It was about feeling lost and confused. This affair, it's not who I am. I never meant for it to go this far." Ethan's expression remained stoic. "It's too late for that, Emily. This isn't just about the affair. It's about the breach of trust, the deception. The STD test is a harsh reminder that our relationship was tainted, and the torn marriage certificates represent the end of what we had." Franklin, now seated heavily on a nearby chair, stared at the floor. "I thought I raised you better than this," he said quietly, almost to himself. "What's done is done. But why, Emily? Why did you think this was the answer?" Emily's mind raced as she tried to understand Ethan's resolve. Her initial shock had given way to a desperate need to make amends, to salvage something from the wreckage of their marriage. But Ethan's demeanor was unyielding. He was determined to confront the reality of their relationship head-on, regardless of the emotional fallout. Ethan's voice was tinged with a mix of anger and sorrow as he continued, "I have known about the affair for months. I wanted to give you a chance to come clean on your own, but you never did. Instead, I had to uncover everything myself, piece by piece. The trip you took, the man you were with, the pregnancy, all of it was part of a larger pattern of deception." The weight of Ethan's words was crushing. Emily felt as though she were drowning in her own mistakes, unable to find a way out. The evidence of her betrayal was undeniable, and the truth was harsh and unrelenting. Her father, still grappling with the shock, finally looked up. "Ethan, is there anything left to salvage here? Is there any hope for reconciliation, or are we done?" Ethan shook his head slowly. "I wish I could say otherwise, but the damage is too extensive. Trust, once broken, is almost impossible to rebuild. And this," he gestured towards the torn marriage certificates, "is a final symbol of the end of our marriage." The gravity of the situation was sinking in for Emily. She had been in denial, hoping that Ethan's grand gesture was a misguided attempt at rekindling their love. But now, faced with the cold, hard truth, she realized that their marriage was beyond repair. As the evening wore on, the guests who had gathered for the anniversary began to leave, their faces a mix of pity and discomfort. The once celebratory atmosphere had turned somber, and the Carters' penthouse felt like a shell of its former self. Emily's pleas became more frantic as she tried to convince Ethan of her genuine remorse. "I know I've hurt you, Ethan, but can't we at least try to work through this? I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make things right." Ethan's gaze was unyielding. "Emily, I've already made my decision. I've seen the evidence, and I can't ignore the reality of what's happened. It's not just about this affair. It's about everything that's led up to it. Our relationship has been compromised beyond repair." Franklin, who had been a silent observer through much of the conversation, finally spoke up. "Ethan, you have every right to be angry and hurt, but remember, there's a human being here who is clearly suffering and regrets her actions. Maybe we should consider what's best for everyone involved." Ethan took a deep breath, his expression softening slightly. "I appreciate your perspective, Franklin, but the decision has been made. I need to move on, and I believe it's the best course of action for both of us." Emily's heart shattered as she faced the reality of her situation. The dreams she had once cherished seemed to be slipping through her fingers, and the future she had envisioned with Ethan was now a distant memory. As the final guest departed and the room grew quieter, Ethan and Emily were left alone, their emotions a tangled mess of anger, sadness, and regret. The night had started with the promise of celebration and love, but had ended with the harsh reality of betrayal and loss. Ethan's face was set with determination as he prepared to leave, his heart heavy with the weight of his decision. "I hope you can find a way to heal from this, Emily. I hope you can learn from your mistakes and find a path forward." Emily watched him leave, her own heart itching with the knowledge that their marriage was irrevocably shattered. The weight of her actions, the impact on her family, and the loss of the future she had once hoped for all crashed down upon her. As the door closed behind Ethan, Emily was left alone with her thoughts and her grief. The evening's events had left an indelible mark on her, a stark reminder of the consequences of her choices and the fragility of trust and love. The chapter closed with Emily sitting in the dim light of the penthouse, the remnants of the evening's celebration scattered around her. The contrast between the initial promise of joy and the finality of the night's revelations left her grappling with a future that was now uncertain and bleak. Emily Carter stared out of the window of her penthouse, the San Francisco skyline bathed in the soft glow of the streetlights. The city was a sea of lights, a stark contrast to the darkness that had enveloped her life. The evening had not just been a turning point, it had been a complete upheaval. The grand anniversary celebration had turned into a courtroom of betrayal, leaving her to face the consequences of her actions and the fractured remnants of her marriage. Ethan had left the penthouse with a finality that was both harsh and clear. Emily's pleas had been met with his unyielding decision, and she was left alone with her thoughts and grief. The DV footage, the STD test, and the torn marriage certificates had been a devastating revelation, but the full extent of Ethan's intentions and the reason for his calculated reveal remained shrouded in mystery. Little did Emily know, the night had more surprises in store. As the hours passed, Emily struggled to find solace. She roamed the penthouse, each step echoing the emptiness that now defined her existence. Her thoughts were a tumultuous whirlpool, filled with regret, sorrow, and confusion. The once vibrant room, now filled with the debris of shattered dreams, seemed to close in on her. Around midnight, there was a knock at the door. Emily, lost in her own world, hesitated before opening it. Standing before her was a man she didn't recognize. He was tall, with a neatly trimmed beard and an air of quiet authority. He introduced himself as Daniel, a private investigator hired by Ethan. "I'm sorry to intrude at this hour," Daniel said, his voice calm and measured, "but there are some things you need to know about Ethan's actions tonight. It's important for you to understand the full context." Emily was too exhausted and emotionally drained to argue. She led Daniel into the living room where they both sat amidst the remnants of the evening's chaos. Daniel took a deep breath before speaking. "Ethan didn't just confront you with evidence of your infidelity," Daniel began. "There's a backstory here, one that involves more than just your relationship. Ethan's decision to expose the truth tonight was part of a larger plan, one that involved a personal vendetta." Emily's eyes widened. "A vendetta? What are you talking about?" Daniel nodded. "Ethan's family suffered a significant injustice years ago. Ethan's father was wrongfully accused and imprisoned for a crime he didn't commit. It was a scandal that ruined their family name. Ethan spent years trying to clear his father's name, and he eventually discovered that the real culprits were involved in a web of deceit that also touched on your recent actions. Emily was stunned. Are you saying that Ethan's motivation for exposing me was more about revenge than our marriage? Yes, Daniel confirmed. Ethan's investigation into your affair wasn't just about you. It was also a means to bring attention to the corruption and betrayal that affected his family. He wanted to use your situation as a catalyst to reveal the truth and seek justice for his father. The revelation was overwhelming. Emily's affair had been a grievous mistake, but now she saw it through the lens of a larger, more complex narrative. Her actions, which she had hoped were personal failings, had unwittingly become part of a grander scheme driven by Ethan's quest for justice. I had no idea, Emily said, her voice trembling. I thought this was just about my mistakes. I never realized it was tied to something so much bigger. Daniel's expression softened. Ethan's method may have been harsh, but his goal was to address a deep-seated wrong. He wanted to ensure that his father's story was told, that the truth came to light, and that justice was served. Your affair became a piece of that puzzle. Emily sat in silence, processing the gravity of the situation. Her initial anger and pain were now mixed with a profound sense of sympathy for Ethan and his family. The personal betrayal she had committed paled in comparison to the injustice they had faced. Daniel stood up, preparing to leave. I just wanted you to have the full picture. I hope you can find some clarity and make peace with what has happened. After Daniel left, Emily sat alone, her mind racing. The night's events had exposed not just the flaws in her marriage but also the broader implications of Ethan's actions. She knew she needed to confront Ethan, not just about their relationship but also about the justice he sought. Early the next morning, Emily made a decision. She would reach out to Ethan, not just to seek reconciliation but to understand his motives fully and to offer support in his quest for justice. She knew that she owed him that much, given the unexpected revelation of this personal struggle. She composed a heartfelt letter, expressing her regret for her actions and her newfound understanding of his pain. She acknowledged the gravity of the injustice he had faced and offered to help in any way she could to right the wrongs that had been done to his family. Emily delivered the letter to Ethan's office, hoping that it would reach him and provide a bridge for dialogue. The office was a modern building in downtown San Francisco, a stark contrast to the emotional turmoil she had experienced. A few days later, Emily received a response from Ethan. His letter was brief but sincere. He acknowledged her letter and expressed gratitude for her understanding. He explained that while their relationship was indeed over, he appreciated her willingness to support his quest for justice. Ethan also mentioned that he was continuing to work with legal authorities to clear his father's name, and hoped that, through their combined efforts, the truth would eventually prevail. Emily felt a sense of closure as she read Ethan's letter. While their marriage was irreparably damaged, the acknowledgement of their individual struggles and the possibility of a resolution to Ethan's family's plight provided a glimmer of hope. The final pages of Emily's story were written in a more reflective tone. She decided to dedicate herself to helping others who had faced similar challenges, using her experience to advocate for those wronged by deceit and injustice. It was a path of redemption and growth, one that allowed her to find purpose in the aftermath of her mistakes. As for Ethan, his quest for justice continued. The process was long and arduous, but he remained resolute in his mission. The exposure of the corruption that had affected his family was a significant step towards healing and reconciliation, not just for him but for others who had been wronged. The chapter closed with Emily and Ethan moving forward in separate paths, each finding their way through the remnants of their past. The anniversary that had begun with celebration and ended in heartbreak had also led to a deeper understanding of personal responsibility and the quest for justice. Their story was one of personal failures and unexpected revelations, but it also became a narrative of growth and redemption.